time warp because I was opposed at committee stage to, I tried to get, in fact, clause 62 dropped. But I actually want to go back to the discussion we were having on Amendment 147. I genuinely don't understand I support this amendment because I genuinely think there are very good reasons why the trade union movement should not be frightened of this amendment, and I don't understand the changes that have happened. Because all that the amendment does is it tries to retain, at least notionally, control into the hands of trade union members the decision about where they want their dues to go, whether they want them to go into a political fund. What possibly could be frightening about that? It means that the trade unions, at least in theory, will have to be kept on their toes and justify why members should opt in, and therefore not assume or assert that their union's political activity, which, to be fair, is often far removed from rank and file workers' interests, is on behalf of their members. It simply puts unions into a position where they have to convince their members to opt in. The noble Lord Byrne reminded us that... sorry, I'm being distracted. The noble Lord Byrne reminded us at committee that one driver of this change reminded us that at committee, one of the drivers that was posed for this change was why we couldn't have this amendment, was because there'd been a decline in funds. And in fact, one of the noble lords stood up and said, since this came in, our political funds have gone down. And I made the point, and I think it's very important, which is, whose fault is that? That surely is the trade union leaders' fault for not inspiring their members to sign up. And I think that it's very important that the trade union leaders who were represented on the opposite benches don't forget that they have an obligation, or that they and other trade unions have an obligation to their members to be accountable to them. So this is an amendment that I think retains control in rank and file members' hands. The final thing I wanted to say was the noble Lord Barber of Ainsdale asked us to consider the political context of when the Burns agreement came in 2016. I'd like us to consider the political context today. And the political context today is that there's been a huge decline in trade union membership, which I would imagine that trade union leaders should be putting all their attention to, and trying to increase the number of members who join trade unions, if that's what the aim is. But there's also, I think, within that decline, been a shift in the sort of political priorities that trade unions are concerning themselves with. And my experience of talking to many ordinary trade union members is they are completely alienated from the kind of political campaigning that a lot of their trade union leaders are involving themselves. It's, as people will say, it seems to be obsessed, or many trade unions seem to be obsessed with the likes of equality, diversity and inclusion. It seems much more akin to HR departments and corporate governments who seem in lockstep with the trade unions over certain issues, much more like a student union than a trade union and so on. And I would like to recommend some recess reading to Noble Lords, a new report entitled Shocked Stewards, Why Today's Trade Unions Police Speech Instead of Protecting Workers and How to Fix It, by Freddie Attenborough. Its foreword was written by former firefighter Paul Embry, who starts off by noting that most advances secured by ordinary workers for generations are attributable to the efforts of trade unions. He's completely pro-trade unionist, is Paul Embry. But he goes on to argue, yet I've watched with dismay in recent years as the trade union movement gradually detached itself from its historic moorings. As membership continues to fall and fall, unions increasingly seem to be retreating to their public sector comfort zone. and have adopted the ideology of radical progressiveness. I actually think that the trade union representatives on the other side of the House should really fight hard to ensure that the political funds of their unions represent their rank and file workers and go out and win the hearts and minds of those workers, rather than using a technocratic way of getting the money in defiance of the choice of their union members. The 2016 compromise was actually a democratic compromise that no trade unionist should be scared of. It should be a spur on rather than the complacency of saying, fix it so we get more money and don't let the rank and file members decide. That is actually anti-democratic, anti-trade union, and the words of trade union bureaucrats, the interests of trade union bureaucrats, not members.